You guys know how this works. I'm sending a tweet. Sending the tweet, putting it in a group chat, and then we will start talking. Because it's talking season, boys. The season is over, unfortunately. God, dude, I always get like when Auburn Bama ended, that sucked because I like teared up a little bit, and when SMU Cal ended, because like what was the 9:30 kick? Like I don't forget what the 9:30 kick was, but it just is like, man, like I love college football so much, and now the season's over. And I like next Saturday, obviously, I'll watch a crap ton of games, but I'm going to be at my friend's house. And it's just not the same because there's only like, I'm not going to use my 14. Like, it just sucks. I hate when the season ends. Like, it comes and then it leaves and it's sad. So, now that it's out of the way, you are watching Missouri Tigers Live. This is episode 51. It is December 1st, 2025. My name is Zach Camillus. I'll be here for the next however much time. This probably will be a little bit of a lengthier show compared to normal Mondays. We got a lot to get to, so if you're in the chat, please keep it up. Keep talking. If you're watching the Blues or Monday Night Football, if you're a St. Louis, Missouri guy, or you're watching the NBA, whatever you're watching, pull up a snack. I had some nice Thanksgiving leftovers for dinner tonight. All right, let's get into it. Let's finish up by wrapping up talking about Arkansas. Just another ugly passing performance. It just can't be a thing next year. There's not really a ton to get into with this Arkansas game. Like Arkansas was getting ready to hire Silverfield as head coach. We'll talk about that later. They were done. Mizzou was done. I think both teams were happy to kind of get the season over. Arkansas, bringing their coaching staff, and they've gotten off to a really hot recruiting start. They flipped a 4-star running back from Mizzou today. So we'll talk about Silverfield in a little bit. But this passing attack, man, it's just got to get better. Missouri ends the regular season 19th in SP+. The ranking I like. I like Bill Connolly and Mizzou grad. 32nd offensive SP+, 13th in defensive SP+, 109th in special teams SP+. Now that went up a lot because you got a punt return touchdown and a big return by Marquise Johnson. As we talked about Saturday, look, if I'm going to yell and poop on Eric Link for the crap that is Missouri special teams, and it has been crap for a long time, I got to give him credit. You got to, like, if it's his fault, the team sucks. It's his fault, the team's good. Like, that's just kind of how it works. So with Arkansas, like the game's over. Look, here's the thing, and let's go ahead and we'll tie this in. So Eli obviously signs an extension with Missouri. No, Eli obviously signs an extension with Missouri, tying him with the program for the next, 5-6 years. Now, I don't think this is the last time we're going to hear about an Eli Drinkwitz coaching search. I just don't. I think there are jobs that are going to come open that will intrigue him in the next couple years. I think Florida State will come open. I do think eventually a school like Michigan's going to open. I don't think he's kind of the guy for like Ohio State, but unless Ryan Day leaves, Ohio State's not opening. Kirby Smart, I don't think is a guy that's going to be around in a decade. Just saying. Alabama might be open in a few years. Kind of depending. So this isn't going to be the last time I think we talk about an Eli Drinkwitz and a coaching search. But it is important that Mizzou locked him up. You're seeing the chaos. You're seeing all the nonsense going around the country. And stability in college football is super, super important. And you've got it now. You can switch coordinators. You can switch, position coaches. But the fact that you still have the head coach who is the CEO, and since Eli has become like in a CEO role, Mizzou is 29-7. Or 29-9, excuse me. 4 losses, 3 losses, 2 losses. 29-9. That's pretty good if you're the Missouri Tigers. Now there is, and Eli talked about this in his post-gamer, there is obviously always another step. And he talked about it. Like we lost 4 games to It was a good season, not a season to celebrate. You won your trophy games, minus the peace pipe with Oklahoma, but that trophy's been lost to time. You took care of Kansas, you took care of South Carolina, and you took care of Arkansas. Those are three things at Mizzou that are and should be celebrated. Now, Kansas does not operate in the same space as you. They just don't. Like in the football world, they don't spend the money. They're not in the same conference for same recruiting. But South Carolina definitely does, and Arkansas has the potential to. And you won both those games, and you continue the dominance that you've had over those two programs, especially since Eli's gotten here. It's a good thing. Look, I've said some things about Eli. Like, I don't regret saying them, obviously. I've been very frustrated. I've been very angry. I think sometimes he coaches like he's at an LSU or an Alabama, not Mizzou. Even though his first couple of years he coached it, he was at – because there's big program coaching and there's smaller program coaching, and he sometimes coaches like he's at a big program that can out-talent teams, and I just don't think you can do that. But there is something to be said at Mizzou for not losing the stupid games. You don't lose to South Carolina. You don't unless South Carolina's really good, like they were last year when they went 9-3. You don't lose to Mississippi State. You don't lose to Kentucky. The last couple of years, 2023, they didn't. Since Kentucky's really taken the downturn under Mark Stoops, and again, we'll talk about that in just a minute. You weren't losing to Auburn. Now comes the hard part. Is now a lot of these schools that you've been beating have new coaches. Do these new coaches elevate these programs to where, look, respectfully, they should be better than Mizzou? Auburn should be, not Arkansas, not South Carolina, and they still have Baby Beamer. But Auburn realistically should expect to be better on a year-to-year basis than Mizzou in terms of talent, and should expect to beat Mizzou. I understand that. That's fine. That doesn't mean you will. Obviously, like Mizzou won the last two and should have won in 2022. They should have won twice. Is what it is. So that's the next step, is continuing to elevate Mizzou, where games like Auburn, games like Mississippi State, well, look what Ole Miss is going to do now that Lane's gone. Like, those games are still very Florida, like winnable football games for this program, and they don't rush past you in the arms race in the NIL and portal era. Continue to beat up on Arkansas. Like, with Mizzou's three permanent opponents, two of the opponents should expect to beat Mizzou every year. It just is how it is. Oklahoma and Texas A&M. Hey, buddy. You going to host again? You've been really friendly the last couple days, last couple shows. It just kind of is what it is. Now, that doesn't mean you can't beat them, obviously. A&M smoked it twice now, though, 3 times since Eli's gotten here. That's got to change. But the Eli extension is important. It creates stability. I will go through my hot board if you guys really want me to. That might be something we do over the off season, because look, I can do it at any time. Like, guys, we have 9 months now basically to kind of talk about whatever the hell we want to talk about. So I can give you my hot board if Eli had left tonight, or I can wait, a week or whatever. It was fun though. I enjoyed doing it because I really did think Eli was going to leave. Like, full disclosure, for about a week, I really did think he was leaving. I thought he was going to take the Penn State job. As we now know, Penn State's been really tight-lipped about that. So credit to Pat Kraft for that. The reports out today, they're going to hire BYU's coach. That would be a really nice hire, C+. We'll kind of see what happens there. But Eli does get his extension. And there's going to be – he's going to do that thing all coaches do where it's like, no, I wasn't trying to leave, and like I didn't interview – guys, he was an option at those schools. Florida, I know for a fact he wanted the Florida job. And then Florida, like, there was such a weird pushback from their fans. I didn't understand it. Like, they're pushing back pretty hard with Summerall. I think the main thing was Eli. It wasn't that it was so much Eli Drinkwitz, it's so much that it was not Lane Kiffin, who I think Florida thought they were going to get up until last, like, Wednesday. but it kind of is what it is. So don't let that confuse you. Eli definitely was talking to these schools about other jobs, but he's ultimately decided to stay at Missouri, and I don't begrudge him for that. There's places where you'll get better opportunities to win a natty, and coaches should take every opportunity they can to look for those. I'm not here to poop on the guy for you shouldn't have even been talking Missouri. He's like, no, I get it. And he's not a Missouri native. That's why so many of these teams want to hire true sons. He's like, oh, well, they won't leave, even though there's a very real possibility Jeff Brom leaves or whoever from Louisville, or Brent Key from Georgia Tech. So, but Eli's here. He's here for the long term. And that should excite Mizzou fans. And now comes the next step as we hit a very important offseason. This is an important offseason. The schedule's only getting tougher. And you're losing a lot off this team. Going into next year, you look at this schedule. Let me go to fbschedules.com. You have UAPB, you have Kansas, and you have Troy. You should win all three of those games. Now, going into Kansas is not going to be the easiest thing in the world. I understand that. But you should win that game because Kansas, yes, you're losing a lot, but Kansas is losing a lot, and Kansas is losing a quarterback is really good. Now, he just blew that game against Utah in his 20,000th game as the quarterback, but he was a good coach. You should expect to win all three of those games. You should expect to win Arkansas. That's 4. You should expect to win Mississippi State. That's 5. You should expect to win Kentucky. That's 6. And then you have the rest of these games. You have at Georgia. Okay. Eli's teams have played Georgia really tough outside of 2020 and 2021. And again, it's only been 2 games. But, no guarantees there, obviously. Florida with John Summerall. We'll touch on what I think of that hire here in just a little bit, but I think it's a really nice hire. Ole Miss will have a new coach. Come on. Texas and Oklahoma both come to Faurot next year. Texas A&M, who is it's looking like a Big 12 schedule next year. Most of your conference home. Wait, how many conference home games do we have next year? 5. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 home games, and 3 of them are against former Big 12 Fros. There's 6 games Missouri should expect to win next year. UAPB, Kansas, Troy, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Kentucky. That means if you want to make the playoff, you got to win 4 of the other 6. And I don't think you're winning at Georgia, so you got to win 4 of 5 against Florida and Oklahoma and Texas A&M, at Ole Miss. It's a big – and I say that now, and even I'm like, ooh, that's a huge ask. And here's what you're losing off this team. You're probably losing your left tackle in Caden Green. He probably is going to go. I don't have any sources about this, but I have a strong feeling he's going to go. Now, the interesting thing will be he's not going to be a tackle in the NFL probably, and he played tackle all year, so we'll see. You're going to lose your left guard. You're going to lose your center. You're going to lose your right tackle. All your skill position guys, except Kevin Coleman, will return. I will talk about portal here in just a second. You're probably returning your tight end. You're probably returning your running back. With the caveat, this is the portal era. So any of these things, Ahmad Hardy could get a bag from LSU. We don't know. On defense, you're losing Zion Young. You're losing Chris McClellan. You're probably losing Damon Wilson. Probably. There's a strong chance you lose Josiah Trotter. You're losing just Tristan Newsom. You're going to lose Toriano Pride. You're going to lose Catalan. You're going to lose Norwood, and you're going to lose Carnell. You are losing. Here's who comes back off the 2 deep, according to ourlads.com. Here's who probably comes back. Because, again, I don't think Damon Wilson comes back. On your D-line, Marquise Graciel, who I think had a really nice back half of the season. Langdon Kitchen. I think Sterling Webb has another year. Darius Smith, Nate Johnson, Elias Williams, Jalen Marshall. Josiah Trotter. We'll see if Josiah Trotter comes back. Nick Rodriguez, Khalil Jacobs, Jeremiah Beasley. I don't think you need a linebacker. Santana Banner, Marvin Burks, Trajan Greco, Nick Deloach, Mose Phillips. You're losing a lot. So, and I've talked about this too, I do think Mizzou needs to Eli's always said production over potential. I understand the sentiment. I agree with it to a point. But as we've get now into portal season again, you do have to play your high schoolers, especially on the offensive line and defensive line. There has to be room for these guys to be developed. The big part of the problem with the Mizzou offense the last couple of years was they play these better teams. Again, no one was shutting down the South Carolina defensive line next year. Actually, the Mizzou offense played pretty well. No one's shutting down the Alabama defensive line. But you have all these portal transfers and you have these guys, and in year one, it's a struggle if they're coming up a level, or it takes time. Mizzou really needs some of these guys to develop. Now, they bring back Curtis Piegler, who I thought got a lot better as the season went along. But can Jalen Early, a transfer from Florida State, who played a lot of minutes there, can he take a step? Is Tristan Wilson finally ready to play? Is Javen Richardson finally ready to play? Henry ready to play? Jack Lang, Logan Reichert, finally, health was the big thing this year. Are these guys finally ready to go? And so you only need to bring in one guy from the portal, one or two guys from the portal. As teams have figured out what to do with the portal, it's become harder to recruit the portal. Teams kind of realize it's like the NFL now. Now that we have players are getting paid, you do have a structure. Like, how much can we pay for this position? You're going to pay more for stud offensive linemen than you are going to for stud safeties. Especially in the portal. There are going to be things like high school recruiting. You're always going to try and go after the studs. You're always going to go for the best players you can. But there is a structure to this on how, and you're obviously going to pay a ton for a quarterback. Going to be a structure, and teams are figuring this out, and so they're not letting as many good offensive linemen. There are always going to be cases like Caden Green, who wanted to come home. That's going to happen, and Mizzou should be very thankful it did. And Keegan Tross was a nice pickup. I thought he had a nice year. He looked overwhelmed in some of the bigger matchups, but Missouri as a whole did. So that's not – I thought Tolleson was a nice player. We'll kind of see where this goes. But if Mizzou could only get one guy out of the portal this year, that'd be pretty nice. And Johnny Williams is on there too, the transfer from West Virginia. Can some of these guys, the guys that have been in the program, even if they're transfers and in their second year in the program, can these guys be ready to play where you're not relying on first year in the program guys to log heavy minutes on your offensive line? On the the offseason, I don't think anything's going to happen with the coaching staff until the bowl game. Because Mizzou's not going to play. I don't know when the bowl game's going to be. Let me look. It'll look easier if I look on my phone, so I do apologize. The bowl game I keep seeing them tied to is the Duke's Mayo Bowl. When is that? January 3rd. Okay, so it is actually after New Year's. I don't think you'll see any real coaching changes until afterward. Like I said on Saturday, I do think they're going to keep Kirby Moore. I don't think that's an awful decision. As much as frustrated as I've gotten with Kirby Moore this year, I don't think it's the worst decision in the world, but that has to come with a caveat that your passing attack is going to be revamped, and it needs to be revamped over the next 50, however many practices you get for bowl season. And I need to see some of it in the bowl game. All your receivers are coming back next year, except for Kevin Coleman. You're going to, barring the portal, and again, that comes with a caveat with everything. You're going to have Josh Manning back. You could have Marquise Johnson back, Olubade, Daniel Blood, Ahmad Hardy's coming back. Jamal Roberts is coming back. You have guys behind them, Sean Terry, Demarion Folks, James Madison. You have guys ready to go. I've said before, I don't think Mizzou needs to attack either one of those. Like, I don't think you'll see anything as far as like Eric Link goes. But I don't think you need a receiver unless you go out and get, like, if he entered the portal today, he's not coming to Mizzou. He's going to go to Michigan or LSU. But if like Nick Marsh became available for Mizzou, like, yeah, go get that kid. That kid's amazing. If there is a stud to go get him. I just don't know how many studs there are going to be to go get. And I don't think you need to bring in a guy to be like your wide receiver 3. We'll see what happens with the rest of the coaching staff. If Looper leaves, if Jacob Peeler gets let go, I don't think they'll let go of Peeler. I think he's been too good of a recruiter, although wide receiver development this year was not good. So, but I think you have enough guys that you don't need to go get somebody in the portal. So speaking of the portal needs as of December 1st. I already said I don't think you need a quarterback. Or a wide receiver. You don't need a running back. Barring people leaving, which is why this exercise kind of eventually becomes fruitless, you have Davis, you have Jones, you have Roberts, you have Hardy. They're all coming back. I wouldn't be shocked if Roberts or Davis took off. I just wouldn't be. And kind of like a Kwan Lacey situation last year. I wouldn't be shocked if Marquise Davis takes off. You already saw today the kid decommitted from Mizzou, Hodges, and went to Arkansas. Like, he's just not going to have any minute time next year. So you do not need a running back. I don't think you need a receiver. You don't need a running back no matter what. You don't need a receiver unless you can get a true stud number 1. Yeah, we'll get into all those positions. A true stud number 1. Which I don't know if you can at this juncture. So I don't think it's going to be a thing. So offensively, it's going to kind of depend on who you think is developing. I want some of these guys. I want Mizzou to start focusing on development for their offensive line. You can't keep just portaling in guys for 1-year stopgaps. Sooner or later, you have to play your guys. You have to develop an offensive line. That's how you become a good offensive line. You ever realize that, like Iowa in their heyday, Wisconsin, Georgia, all these guys, teams that have good offensive lines, it's because they recruit and develop. It's not going to be across the board next year for offensive line. You're not going to walk into next year and Javen Richardson's at 1 tackle, Jalen Early's at a guard, Wilson at center, Johnny Williams, Jack Lent. That's just not realistic in any sense of the word. But it would be nice if like 2 or 3 or 4 of those spots were filled internally, especially the guys that are now be in their second year in the program from the portal, whether it is Johnny Wilson, whether it is not Johnny Wilson, heavens. Whether it is Johnny Williams, Tristan Wilson, Jalen Early, Javen Richardson, any of these guys, Jack Lang, to come in and fill spots. A lot of these guys were highly recruited. They were highly thought of. I do think you probably will need a center. Although I thought Tristan Wilson did a fine job last year when he had to fill in for Tollison. But we'll see. That's going to kind of be up to Eli and that staff. But at some point, you have to play your guys. Like, why recruit them? That's on offense. I don't think you don't need a tight end. Norfleet's coming back. Harris is going to come back. I like Vince Brown. I like Jude James. And Hoffman, the kid from Iowa, is really talented. So you don't need to get a tight end, like in the slightest. Don't even talk to a tight end. Defensively, you're probably losing Wilson and Young, like we talked about. I like Darius Smith. I actually think with another year of development, Darius Smith's going to become really, really good. Now that he's another year removed from his ACL. You'll have Darius Smith, you'll have Langdon Kitchen, you'll have Nate Johnson, and you'll have Javian Hilson, or you'll have Hilson. I don't think you need a D end. I think Mizzou's done a really good job you saw the development that Zion Young went through. He was kind of an afterthought last year. He had the big play against Oklahoma, and this year he was a freaking monster. I think you could see a similar jump with Darius Smith. I don't think Mizzou needs to go out and get a D end. I just don't. Like Nate Anderson a couple years ago had a really big year at App State. I just don't think you need a D end. Now, you will need a D tackle, more than likely. Again, I can talk about how I would like to see Mizzou fill in with internally. I just don't think that's an option. I do believe Sterling Webb has another year. Jalen Marshall got some snaps this year. Braylon Henderson's not coming back. Marquise Graciel, who I thought in the second half of the season had starting with the Auburn game, I thought Marquise had a really good second half of the year. So I think, you can line him up for a spot, but you're really, really going to miss Chris McClellan. That dude for 2 years has just been an outstanding football player in the middle of your line. So you're going to need help at D tackle. Look, if a beast D end comes available, fine. Like, again, I'm putting a couple caveats on these things because we don't know what Mizzou is going to lose in the portal potentially. But I do think I don't think you really need a D end unless like a true blue, like a Damon Wilson comes available, who was a 5-star kid. Georgia didn't want to see him go. They decided to pay other players. And look, it's kind of hurt them because their pass rush has been fairly mediocre this year. It's the biggest thing that might cost them a natty because that team is a really good team. They're going to potentially win the SEC. At worst, they're going to host a playoff game. So you host a playoff game, you're a really good team. Going up at linebacker, if Trotter stays, I don't think you need a linebacker. If Trotter stays, you'll have Trotter, you'll have Rodriguez, you'll have Jacobs, you'll have Beasley. I don't think you need a linebacker. I think Mizzou's actually pretty deep. Now, if Trotter leaves, you probably do need to find like a stud middle of the field tackling machine. But if Trotter comes back, I don't think you need a backer. You have a few guys here that are very capable. Like the staff is really high on Rodriguez for obvious reasons. He was a good player this year. He just needs to cut the stupid crap and some of these personal fouls that just keep. Did they score? Oh, Benner. Good God, man. That's 2. It's you one-on-one. I mean, that's a nice shot, but that's a nice shot. And then going up, you're going to need a safety. I know, again, this staff's really hired on Greco. Marvin Burks, they obviously like. And I thought Marvin played a pretty good second half of the year. You'd have Santana Banner. You probably need to add a guy to play nickel to take over that Carnell. If Mose Phillips develops, he could potentially be a fill-in spot, but I think you do need to bring in a guy there. And you need 2 corners. Like, you just need 2 corners. I don't know the depth well enough, to say how they're – I don't know how they're – I do know the depth. I don't know how they're developing to say whether some of the guys that are behind them are going to fill in and like Deloach, but you probably do need to bring in a corner or 2. And probably like you need to get the best corner you can, to be quite honest. Yeah, and then I think he said punter. Yeah, you need a punter. Not Stanford's backup punter, a legit punter. You don't need a kicker. Blake Craig's coming back. So, yeah, it's a lot, man. Like, what did I just say? You probably need 2 to 3 offensive linemen. Hopefully you only need like 1 starter. You'll need 2 to 3 corners. You're going to need a couple D tackles, and that's a lot. And potentially a quarterback. I will wait till the bowl game. My thing with the bowl game, too, as we go back talking about the offseason, playing Bo Pribula in that game is a complete waste of time. It's just a waste of time. Like, Zollers is your guy. I want to see him in that bowl game. If he plays well, then he's your guy. Like, you don't need to go in because I don't know when Mizzou's bowl game. Duke's Mayo Bowl is January 3rd. The portal opens the 2nd. Look, if you're going to enter the portal, you'll enter after the game. So, but I would like to see Zollers in that game. And if he stinks, then you can really look at a quarterback. there's just no point in playing Bo. There's just not. Like that's a waste of a game when you could be learning a lot of valuable information and hopefully implementing some new passing stuff for your offense in 2026. That needs to be better as the schedule gets better that season. But we'll have a lot of time to talk about the portal. We went over the Eli extension. Obviously, it's a great thing for Mizzou. Stability is important in college football, and you have a chance to really clean up this offseason. A lot of good teams are going to lose players. North Texas is a good team. That's going to lose players. Tulane, good team, going to lose players. Guys are going to leave Ole Miss. Guys are going to leave Florida. Guys are going to leave even like an Arkansas who has good players despite what most people may think. And they're not necessarily like Ole Miss guys aren't necessarily going to follow Lane to LSU. And LSU is going to lose guys that aren't necessarily going to. So there's going to be a lot of chaos in the portal and in recruiting. So I think it is a net positive to have Eli back, and I think he'll have an opportunity to really do a bang-up job in recruiting this offseason. And he's a good coach, and it's important that Missouri keeps around good coaches. I know there's frustration that he hasn't won big games. Guys, Mizzou, like what was Gary? Gary got Oklahoma once. He got him once, and other than that, he really struggled against those top-level teams that have like more talent. Like obviously, he got Kansas in 2007, but when you think of the Texases, the Oklahomas, the good Nebraskas, he also didn't win those games. I don't think that's what caused it. Look, and I know you just you hopped in here, so I think he was interviewing. He was he can say whatever he wants in press conferences, and he's going to, and that as he should. He was interviewing. I know for a fact he wanted the Florida job, and Florida thought they were getting Lane. And when up until the last minute, and Eli, I think there is a part of Eli who saw the reaction Florida was getting when Eli's name was getting leaked. And I don't think it was. Some of it was Eli. There was a lot of people that just don't like Drinkwitz, and that's fine. But I think some of it was Eli is not Lane Kiffin, and now Florida has John Summerall, and we'll talk about when we go around the SEC. I just think, let's not be at a distraction. But a distraction for what? Like, you weren't beating Oklahoma anyway with the way you coached the game. And a lot of guys off this team are leaving anyway because they're graduating. So, yeah, I know what he said. I just don't really buy it. But thank goodness he's staying. So you are listening to Missouri Tigers Live. We just talked for, holy cow, I did not realize I'd already been live for 30 minutes. This is going to be a long show. About kind of finished up, we're talking about Arkansas. Not really a ton to talk about. What kind of we want to see the rest of this offseason and what the offseason and the brings and the portal needs. So I think now we'll go, and because this does tie to Mizzou, we're going to talk about some SEC coaches and how it kind of impacts Mizzou. We'll start with the big one, Lane Kiffin to LSU. Look, on a surface level, I get it. You can't win a national title at Ole Miss. You can at LSU. You very much can at LSU. But the whole way Lane went about this was a joke. It was. And then you had CAA and ESPN caping for him. Oh, you should let him coach the playoff, which was ridiculous and never going to happen. If Lane was an adult, he would have taken the job before the Egg Bowl. But he's not. He wanted the whole world to talk about how great Lane Kiffin is and that Lane should get what he wants because he's Lane Kiffin. And now the funny stories coming out of Ole Miss, we'll see if some of them are true. If you read the Ole Miss 247 board, well worth the price of admission over there. We'll see. It's a good hire for LSU, obviously. It's a really good hire for LSU. I'm a little worried about the fact that at Ole Miss, he didn't really recruit high school. Now, was that because Ole Miss it's a struggle to get high school talent to Ole Miss? Or is it because he doesn't want to recruit high schoolers? He prefers the portal. Yeah, we learned nothing. Like he worked so hard to rebuild his image, and he just nuked it. If he had left before the Egg Bowl, I think all of us, and my reaction definitely would have been like, look, it sucks, for Ole Miss, and Ole Miss fans would be pissed, and yeah, as they should be. But like, I kind of get it, like I get it. It's LSU. Like how many often is LSU going to come open? But he tried to have his cake and eat it too, and like that was never going to work. And if you're Lane to an extent, I don't understand it, because if you stayed, if Ole Miss, if Keith Carter had said, yeah, sure, that atmosphere was going to be, you're going to take an Ole Miss playoff game, a pinnacle for that program, and it's going to be all about you and not in a positive way. That place was going to be toxic as hell. The players wouldn't have played well in it. That's what I haven't seen a lot of people talking about that, because you see a lot of ESPN people being like, "Oh, you should have let them finish," because they're all represented by the same agency. Wonder where they're getting their talking points from. Why would like that place would have been horrible? Vaughn Hemingway would have been a horrible place that night. It'd have been must-watch TV. But like Lane would have been getting booed on the field, and how does that impact the players? Like it would have just been awful. Like why would he even want that? I don't understand. But LSU gets their man, and we'll see what happens. He needs to recruit high school at LSU. Like that entire state football program is designed to, coach up that there. Yeah. Speaking of that, LSU, yeah, no, I was actually going to touch on that. My friend and I were talking about this earlier today. I think the only thing I can recently think of that compares would be when Chris Beard went back to Texas Tech. Like that's the only thing that can come close to this. Like this is going to be – that's a game I'll have the audio on for. And I am not off – except for Mizzou, there's times I don't have audio on. I'll watch my 4 games. I don't have like something else. I'll be listening to something else as I'm trying to get through watching a day. Or I'll have friends over, whatever. That'll be a full blast audio kind of game. That place is going to be disturbing. And look, this is not, I'm not doing the Mike Valenti Michigan State threat like he did a couple years ago. Don't bring your kids to that game. I don't endorse anything, but don't do. That's not what I'm saying. But like, that might be a game you don't want to bring your kids to, because that could get ugly. And it's unfortunate that it came down to this. It was going to get ugly no matter what. But going out like this and kind of torching that program on the way out is just disgusting. Like it's disgusting behavior. It's selfish and it's moronic. And best of luck to Lane. As far as Ole Miss is concerned, this is where I'll tie it back to Mizzou. Ole Miss and Mizzou compete for a lot of the same recruits. They do. They compete for a lot of recruits. We just talked about like Kawan Lacey was at Mizzou, and Lane apparently told him, like, we'll see you next year when you enter the portal. And he was right. Lacey goes to the portal. He goes to Ole Miss, and he's going to finish second or third in the Doak Walker. Hardy's going to finish second or third, and they're going to lose to Jeremiah Love, which is fine. I'm fine with that for what it's worth. Like, I know some people are going to get mad. It's fine. So now we'll see what they look like with Pete Golding. Now, the positives for Pete Golding is and the unfortunate thing for Mizzou, he is a dogged recruiter. He is the hardest working recruiter on that staff. They kept a lot of their defensive staff. They kept Joe Judge. We'll see what happens with them in the playoff, but I can't help but wonder if that's not an emotional hire to keep this band together for the playoff, which I understand. Look, it's a no-win situation for Ole Miss. It really, really is. Like, what could you do for them? Like, if Lane had left before the Egg Bowl, you could have hired Alex Golesh. You could have hired, maybe you could have talked to Summerall. Maybe you could have talked to some of these guys, Will Stein, whoever. Maybe Matt Campbell would have been interested. But because you have to make a quick hire, and you end up with, it's an emotional move to keep continuity. Now, we'll see how it works out. Again, Pete's a really good recruiter. And because of the talent level on the defense and the fact that Lane didn't recruit high school, he's done a really good job. I know their defense isn't like the hallmark of Ole Miss football over the last few years, but I think he's done a really nice job bringing in guys to play. So I don't think like Ole Miss is screwed from the outset, but C+ for that hire. I'm nervous about that. Elsewhere in the SEC, Auburn hires Alex Golesh. It'll be interesting to see what Auburn does running that spit on the sideline offense. I know coaches use, and I think Brooks Austin talked about this, I know coaches try to negatively recruit against that. I think Mizzou should be interested by this hire because I think if you have a speed receiver, I think you're going to have a really hard time getting him away from Auburn. If Golesh works out as a head coach at Auburn, we don't know. Again, good hire. Don't know if it's going to work out C+. But with speed guys, you're going to have to be – if you want a guy and Auburn wants a guy, if this Golesh thing works out, you're going to be really hard-pressed. I think it's a good hire. I really do. Again, C+. It'll be you add another team that's going to run the Josh Heupel, Art Briles, veer and shoot. Again, the spit on the sidelines with the wide splits. It's going to come down to how he recruits. I know from listening to people, he does a really good job in Florida recruiting. At South Florida, you would think has more than it actually does in terms of resources. And he's really cleaned it up down there. And he's really used if he gets QB, I don't know. Like, he's done a really good job with QBs. Like, Hendon Hooker sucked, and then he got there, and Hendon Hooker became awesome. Byron Brown's obviously a really good quarterback, but he developed him. I always get a little nervous about these guys when they just rely on, like, one good quarterback to elevate them. That's not the case here. Multiple QBs have played for him and been really well. And if they get it right, if they keep, like, Deuce Knight around, and he lives up to that 5-star billing, man, like, Auburn – could be real. Like, that's a good roster. It really is. If they can keep some guys around, if they had good quarterback play this year, they beat Mizzou. They probably beat Bama. They beat Oklahoma. That's a borderline playoff team if they get top half of the SEC quarterback play, but they got some of the worst quarterback play in the SEC. So I think that's a program ready to win right away. And again, I talked about this earlier with Eli. Like, yes, Eli didn't lose the stupid games. He hasn't lost to Auburn. He didn't lose to Auburn. But there's a potential here, and same with Florida, that those teams aren't stupid games anymore or like bad losses anymore because they've picked it the hell up. Auburn hires there. Florida hires John Summerall. Again, their fans are in a tivy because not Lane Kiffin. Dude, Summerall's the freaking man. I was listening to a podcast. Forgive me, I forget which one. I do want to give credit. I believe it was Cover 3. They mentioned when Napier got hired at Florida, a lot of Sun Belt players, a lot of other coaches and guys around the Sun Belt were like, look, Billy's a hell of a recruiter, and that shows. Look at that. I mean, if you watch the Florida State-Florida game, the athletes on Florida's side of the ball who like haven't tried in 2 months looked so much better than Florida State's athletes. Like, that's a really good roster. And again, the same thing. If Florida can keep those guys around, that's going to be a brutal game for Mizzou next year. Brutal. I'm not saying they're going to lose. It's just going to be really, really difficult to win, especially if he can develop and see who he hires at OC. But Summerall's a really good coach. And if any of these guys are going to become your next Kirby, like if you're looking for like the next couple years, Dan Lanning, Summerall would be my pick. I really like him. And I talked about a lot of people are like, oh, Napier's just not a great head coach. They've heard the opposite about John Summerall. He is a professional, no nonsense. He does not lose stupid games. He coaches the hell out of his guys. Yes, they lost to Tulane, or they lost to Ole Miss. Tulane does have a ceiling. My main nervous about Summerall, he did a great job building up Troy. Troy was a disaster when he got there. But he didn't really build up Tulane. Willie Fritz did that. So how can he build up another program? How will he be being the face of the Florida Gators? Remains to be seen. Again, C+. We'll see how it goes. And then probably the most important hire in relegation to Missouri is Arkansas hires Ryan Silverfield. He was a guy when Eli was looking around and the Eli rumors were out there. Look, it's a fine hire. Hopefully, maybe it'll work out C+. But I don't I didn't want them to hire Ryan Silverfield. Now he does have a nice couple double-digit season wins at Memphis. Memphis is the most well-funded program in that conference. They have not won it since he's been there. They routinely lose stupid games. They went 4-4 this year. They were they were the driver's seat for the playoff, and then they lost at UAB, who had already fired their coach. Now their coach was Trent Dilfer, so the odds are, like their coaching got better when Hunter Yurachek, like they're that fan base is going nuts over him, but I don't think it's fair to completely write Ryan Silverfield off. Now, if you're going off the first 2 days he's been there, he's done a really nice job. He brought in a couple guys Mizzou wanted, and he straight up stole a Mizzou recruit. Again, it's a team that you're going to be recruiting a lot against. I'm not that high on Ryan Silverfield. Look, full disclosure, he was going to be on the hot seat entering next year at Memphis. Memphis has the FedEx money. There's too much FedEx money in Memphis for them to be bad. So not bad, but middling, not winning that conference. And now that and then if he didn't get the Arkansas job, like Summerall's out, Morris is out at North Texas, like you had to win the conference next year. But that's, we'll see what happens. It could work out. It could. There are coaches, everyone's like, oh, God, they hired him, and then it worked out beautifully. I just don't necessarily think it will here. For Arkansas fans' sakes, it's better, man, because, like, if that program made another bad hire, like, it is going to get that's going to get ugly because somebody has to lose football games in the SEC, and they're going to lose a lot of them if they didn't knock this hire out of the park. Kentucky fired Mark Stoops. It was time. Mark had not been really good the last couple years there. They're hire Will Stein. Will Stein will be allowed to coach Oregon throughout the playoff. It's fine. It's not Lane going to LSU, guys. It's not the same. I think it's an inspired hire. Interesting that they hired a former Louisville Cardinal to coach the Kentucky Wildcats. But Mark Stoops should get a statue at that stadium. Like he won 10 games multiple times at Kentucky, for God's sakes. That's not to say that Will Stein can't do better. He can't be Curt Cignetti, but if that's the bar that we're going to put all these new coaches at, they're screwed. So Mark Stoops is a really good coach. Good on him for negotiating that buyout to be lower. Or it was because it used to be like they had to give him like all of his money in the first 60 days. And now I think they've spread it out. So he basically gets a pension plan over the next few years. Well done by him. And a lot of respect for him. He kind of did what to a smaller extent what Eli did at Mizzou. Like when Stoops had Kentucky rolling, they didn't lose to South Carolina. They didn't lose to Missouri. They didn't lose to Vanderbilt. And that, at borderline, you were going 3-5. And then he really got a nice run there where they were beating Florida a lot of years. So automatically they were getting 4 free – and they played Mississippi State a lot. And after the first couple of years, when Dak left, they were getting wins over Mississippi State. So now that was 4 to 5 conference wins they could get. They were within reach a year. Never were quite able to climb the Tennessee hump or the Georgia hump, but you could walk into an SEC schedule when Stoops really had it rolling up to about COVID, and they were going to go. There were 4 games you knew really good chance of winning, and a couple they'd probably lose, and we'll see what they did in the other ones. He deserves a lot of credit for what he did there. That's a really hard place to win. With Vanderbilt, I don't think Vanderbilt's going back to the basement. There isn't. There really isn't. I don't think Vanderbilt's going back to the basement now that Pavia leaves. I don't think all of a sudden Will Stein's going to take Kentucky above like a Missouri and an Ole Miss and Auburn, but there's room to go past Mississippi State and South Carolina, seeing what they do with Beamer. Like there's room for upward mobility at Kentucky. I just don't know how much. It is interesting that Will Stein did take this job. Look, it's an SEC job. Even if he does a bad job, he's walking home with 40 mil. So I think he could have been better served maybe with another couple of years at Oregon. He could have gotten a much better job. Kirby waited, and he got the Georgia job. But best of luck to him unless he plays Missouri, which he does next year. he was a guy. Well, I'm not going to do this tonight. I'm already 50 minutes in, and I want to talk a little more nationally. But remind me sometime to do my Mizzou hot board, maybe next week. There won't be a ton to talk about next week. So I did have a hot board for Mizzou because, like I said, I did really think Eli was going to leave for a little bit there. So I think that covers a lot of the SEC stuff I wanted to touch on. New coaches everywhere. Again, we're not going to go into portal or like targets or whatever, guys. We'll have 9 months to talk about that stuff. Nationally, Penn State, it looks like it's going to be Sataki. That'll be a hell of a hire. C+. Looks like it's going to be Bob Chesney at UCLA. That's an inspired hire. C+. Michigan State let go of Jonathan Smith. They had to. They just had to. You can't win one conference game in 2 years or two conference games in 2 years, whatever. Like, they just had to let him go. They hired Pat Fitzgerald. We'll see. Like, Pat didn't have a great rep with NIL. There was the union thing that he was against. Every coach was against that until it was more profitable. So I don't blame him for that. We'll see how that goes. He needs to hire a great OC, and that's going to be difficult at Michigan State. It just is. He needs to hire a guy that is ready to go, and he'll at least instill toughness. In the Big Ten, once you get past Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Oregon, USC, like Washington and Indiana, and even towards the bottom of that list, maybe with like a Washington, there's a lot of room for upward. The reason the SEC is better than the Big Ten, the top of the Big Ten is awesome. Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan's been really good up until last year. Under Harbaugh, they were great. But the middle chunk, that middle third of the conference sucks. It just does. It's a lot of Maryland. It's a lot of Nebraska. It's a lot of Iowa, who had a really nice year. But it's a lot of Minnesota, Illinois. A lot of programs that no Big Ten to West for Pat. It's a lot of just a glut of teams that there's room for opportunity at Michigan State to get back into the top half of the conference. Is Pat Fitzgerald the guy to do that? Maybe. We'll see. He did a really nice. He did the Lord's work at Northwestern, so he deserves some credit there. And we'll see what happens. Going back to the SEC, talk about this weekend's games a little bit. The Iron Bowl was fun. Auburn just does not have. I know they didn't really want to burn the red shirt. They should have played Deuce Knight. I think they would have better than Ashton Daniels. Alabama looks vulnerable, man. That's a team. If I'm a playoff team, I really want to see them. There's some teams I don't want to see. I wouldn't want to see Notre Dame. I wouldn't want to see Oregon as they round into form. I wouldn't mind seeing Alabama. They've really struggled. And they were by pick to win the Natty before the season, but they just have looked awful. Texas beats Texas A&M. There is a thing with Texas, hey, we should be in the playoff. Look, for the Longhorns, you have to be a good team to have the wins they do. You just have to be. They have 3 wins over top 13 teams. They have a win over Oklahoma. They have a win over Vandy, and they have a win over Texas A&M. On the same plate, and yes, the Ohio State loss, look, you're the only team that competed with Ohio State this year. So you deserve some credit for that. They do. I know it's going to say, oh, moral victories, it's Texas, and I kind of understand that. But they're the only team that played, they had a 4th and goal to tie the game against Texas and just didn't get it. The ugly loss to Florida, and then, look, getting pounded by Georgia in the 4th quarter didn't help. And then you also barely escaped Kentucky and Mississippi State. You should have lost one of those games. The fact that you didn't, you're just not a great team. Better luck next year. And if Arch comes back, they're going to be really good next year, and they come to Columbia. So, we'll see. But they shouldn't make the playoff. I understand the argument they're going to make. If we just played, so and so instead of Ohio State, we probably would have been in, and they're probably right. But it just kind of is what it is. Best of luck to them next year. Enjoy your bowl game. Georgia beats Georgia Tech in a really ugly game. It's not surprising Georgia Tech came out and fought and played that game really hard after getting smoked by Pitt. Shame that game was at a neutral site. Shame on everybody for that. Ole Miss beats Mississippi State. Yeah, we don't need to get into that. Oklahoma. I would not be shocked if Oklahoma loses by like 2 touchdowns in the first round. Like, that offense is so bad. It's so bad. But they make enough plays, and that defense is great where they're playing these middling SEC teams, Missouri, LSU. They can get wins, and that deserves credit. And they also have a win at Bama. A 45-yard touchdown and a 58-yard touchdown get them the win over LSU. John Mateer just does not see it, but he was 23 for 38 for 318, 2 touchdowns and 3 picks. Some of those picks were atrocious, but they got the win. Alabama, what are we talking? Vanderbilt, man, this is why the playoff sucks. Like, we're not going to celebrate Vanderbilt's season. We're just not, and Pavia was unreal. 18 to 28 for 268 and a touchdown, 2 ugly picks, and then 20 for 165 and a touchdown, and Cedric Alexander 10 for 115, 3 touchdowns. They just kind of pound Tennessee. Tennessee, I'm kind of have to go back to the drawing board. They have some really talented quarterbacks. I know Aguilar is part of the lawsuit to get another year of eligibility. That can't happen. Like, Tennessee should not be playing him next year. Play one of your stud kids that look like that are really talented. Look, they lost their quarterback in April. None of the kids were ready. Fair enough. Like, it's not Tennessee will be fine. Louisville beats the crap out of Kentucky. A little surprising. I actually thought Kentucky would win that game. They played really hard over the last few weeks, but they just dominated every aspect of that football game, 440 to 140. Cutter Bully had come along really well this season, and he was 13 for 26 for 100 yards and two picks. Like, he just wasn't good. Clemson, South Carolina was driving to tie the game and just blew it because Shane Beamer sucks. Sorry. And then Florida State. This can go into national, dude. Like, Florida State, how does that happen? You've gone 2 years now without a road win. You just got killed by a team with an interim coach. That can't happen. Just like Florida State is what are we doing? Like, guys, you're quickly losing your relevance in the college football world. Around the country, for the teams that are still playing for things that matter, Indiana smoked Purdue. Barry, buddy. Arizona beat Arizona State. Nice year for Brent Brennan and the Wildcats, and Arizona State will be back. Utah should be removed from playoff discussions after their pitiful performance against Kansas. Relied on Jalen Daniels, red zone interceptions, including 1 pick 6. Ohio State smokes Michigan, not surprising in the slightest. Texas Tech, it's interesting because the thought process is if BYU loses, they're out, and that's probably true. Because BYU is not currently in a playoff spot. I think if BYU beats Tech, Tech is still in the playoff. Tech lost to Arizona State on the road. Tough loss for them a couple months back. But other than that, man, like, you just got to give them credit for smoking everybody, right? Like, they haven't, outside of that game, they have not played a competitive game in the Big 10. Or in the Big 12, excuse me. They beat Utah by 24 on the road. They beat Houston, a 9-3 Houston team, by 24 on the road. They beat Kansas by 5 scores. They lost Arizona State. Obviously, they destroyed Oklahoma State. They went to Kansas State. You know, as bad as Kansas State was this year, still not the easiest place to play. They won by 3 scores. They beat BYU by 3 scores. They beat UCF by 40. They beat West Virginia by 50. They're just killing everybody. I don't think they can win a natty. They don't follow kind of the guidelines for what we see for a national championship. But quietly, Texas Tech is having the best season in program history, and that deserves credit. Maybe second best, maybe 07, but like, they lost by 50. So to Oklahoma. So we'll see. But Notre Dame beats the crap out of Stanford. BYU was playing with his food against UCF for a little bit and then found it. Miami did what they had to do against Pitt. Like, if Miami wants any discussion, and they're not out of it. I don't think. No, since Bama won, I think they're out because I don't think Bama goes out unless they get killed. I think Miami's out, unfortunately, but for them. But not for me, but for them. Let's see, we got a comment here. That'd be fun. They're not allowed to throw tortillas anymore, but that'd be really fun. The game down in Lubbock. Virginia take care of business against Virginia. Cal gets SMU out of the ACC title game, and Tulane beats the crap out of Charlotte. That's what kind of happened that week. Looking forward to this week. North Texas, Tulane is going to be a point-a-minute fest. Both coaches will still be there. It should be a really fun football game. Winner is going to go to the playoff. It's how it is. Winner's going to go. Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State. Look, we got to give Jacksonville State a lot of credit. They lose Rich Rod and are still going to go play for the Conference USA. Kennesaw won 2 games, and they're going to go play for a conference title. James Madison's probably going to lose their head coach, but they're going to win the Sun Belt. They'll beat the crap out of Troy, unless the Chesney thing is such a distraction. UNLV, Boise. I wish like the computer had put New Mexico in, or San Diego State. Those are 2 better teams to me, but it is what it is, man. And then we get to Saturday, Texas Tech, BYU. Look, I've seen BYU try to. So there's a narrative like, oh, it's hard to beat a team twice. And it is, unless you can't block them. And Texas Tech, well, not a lot of teams can block Texas Tech. But BYU can't block them. So I think Texas Tech wins that game pretty handily by like multiple scores. Miami, Western Michigan. That's a fun little football game for the MAC. Georgia, Alabama. Look, we've seen Carolyn DeBoer go up against Kirby Smart and by proxy Dan Lanning now 5 times, and he's won every single time. Now, the second half of that game in Athens, they got shut out. So what do they adjust? If Bama doesn't lose by like 17, they're in the playoff. So it'll be really interesting to see there. I'd pick Georgia to win, but I wouldn't pick them by 3 scores. Indiana, Ohio State, the least anticipated 1v2 matchup. I would not be shocked if the loser is the 2 and the winner's the 1. Like they stay in the same spots. Maybe the loser falls to 3. Kind of depending what they do with some of the other teams in and around that spot, like Texas Tech. I just wouldn't be shocked by it. See what Georgia does. But I do think, like, I don't think either of these teams are in risk of losing the bye, which means, maybe Indiana will play like an Oregon or someone like that instead of Notre Dame, Oklahoma, but ultimately I don't think it really matters. And then Duke, Virginia, winner, we'll see, man. Like, just James Madison's schedule is ranked so low. Duke would have some much better wins. I wouldn't be shocked if they put Duke in over James Madison. Like, I also don't think the committee's putting 2 G5 teams in. I'll believe it when I see it. But Virginia, if they were to win it, it'd be a really nice finish to a dream season for them. It's a program, like, how many of you are really thinking about Virginia football on a day in, day out basis? And to make the playoff, to finish out this horseshoe in your butt season, which they have. Like, there's so many games they probably should have lost that they won just due to a play or 2. That's awesome for them. And so, and when you have a season like this, you have to take advantage. So we'll see what happens Saturday night. I'll be back next Monday. I was live for an hour. Thank you guys for all tuning in. This is Missouri Tigers Live. I know we spent half the show on Mizzou, half the show on Around the Country. That's because this is the interesting part of the year. There's nothing really interesting to talk about Mizzou right now. We're not going through a coaching search. They had a ho-hum win over Arkansas. It just kind of is 8-5 Duke in the playoff would be insanely funny. Just kind of is what it is. So thank you guys for joining in. Like and subscribe. We'll be here all off season when there are going to be a lot more Mizzou things to talk about. What happens with these coaches, what happens in the portal. We'll be right here to cover it all. You can always find me on Twitter at PsychoZ50 and like and subscribe. Like I said, we're here all the time, every week, and I'll be back next Monday. Big week for Mizzou basketball, obviously. You got Notre Dame tomorrow and then Kansas on Sunday. So you guys enjoy that. Enjoy your hockey. Enjoy your college basketball, your college football, your NFL, whatever you want. And we will see you next week. MIZ and go Tigers, man. Like, beat Kansas again.